I stepped into my newly purchased house for the first time. Later, Ken, my second son, and Allie, Ken's wife, arrived. Seeing them frolicking like children, I couldn't help but be slightly exasperated. At that moment, my husband, John, cleared his throat and declared loudly, "I'm going to be living with Ken and Allie from today." I feigned confusion at John's announcement. Huh? Of course. Having Allie around will brighten up the place. We three decided this after a discussion. Oppose us, and forget about being taken care of you. But they knew nothing of what I had been doing in secret. Excuse me? I'm still single, you know? What? What? The confusion on John, Allie, and Ken's faces was almost comical. I told them the truth, which sent John into a panic, with Allie and Ken also showing signs of worry. But this was just the beginning. I was about to show them a real hell. My name is Hannah. I am a 61-year-old housewife. I live with my husband, John, who is 4 years older than me. John, whom I married through a matchmaker, is old-fashioned and stubborn, always wanting things his way, leading to countless conflicts over the years. However, I eventually learned that it was easier to give in, and that's how we've made it so far. John has retired after many years at his company and is now living on his pension. We have 2 children. Our eldest son, Michael, is 35 and has been living independently for a while. Though he's still single, which John, with his old-fashioned views, sometimes complains about, I'm not too worried. More concerning is our second son, Ken, who is 33. After graduating from a vocational school, Ken works as a nursing assistant. But he couldn't stick to a job. He would quit one facility with some excuse or suddenly start working at another. His life was anything but stable, and I was worried. However, 3 years ago, the tide changed. Once he got a job at a certain facility, he started working seriously, as if he had become a completely different person from the one who used to work grudgingly. And last year, he happily announced that he was going to marry a woman he met at the same care facility. I thought to myself, that makes sense. It must have been her influence that made him so dedicated to his work. I was delighted, but that joy was short-lived. When I met her, she turned out to be a terrifying person. The first meeting was a year ago. During dinner, Ken said his fiancée was coming over, so I was preparing to host her. You don't need to go all out. She's easygoing, Ken said. But meeting my son's future wife, I felt it was natural to put in some effort. Then, the woman arrived. Hi there. I'm Allie. Nice to meet ya. Her casual demeanor took me aback. John was completely frozen. Ken tried to smooth things over. Allie is just full of energy. You know, having someone as bright as the sun in the house makes everyone else feel more lively, right? It's all about how you frame it. Allie's vibe felt more superficial than energetic to me. Despite my dismay, I laid out the pizza I had ordered for the occasion. Oh, pizza! I absolutely love it! Well, that's good. The meet and greet continued amid my confusion. As it turns out, Allie, who had been working at the same facility as Ken since graduating from high school, was 23 years old, 10 years younger than Ken. I was surprised by the age difference, but Allie kept the conversation lively. I've been a caregiver for a long time, so I'm pretty good at handling the elderly. If anything happens, I'll be there to take care of you guys. Well, thank you. I wondered whether I should praise her reliability or just let it pass. Allie had a way of making blunt statements that left us at a loss for words. I wasn't sure if John, with his old-school attitudes, could keep up with her casual demeanor. Glancing over, he seemed unsure of how to respond. Allie didn't miss a beat and teased him. John, you're barely reacting. This is where you're supposed to laugh. Saying that, she playfully poked John's cheek. I was astonished by her boldness. What are you doing? John was flustered, but Allie didn't care. Relax, John. I was worried he might explode with anger, but when I cautiously looked at him, he was blushing and embarrassed. Allie wore a triumphant smile, noticing John's reaction. Thinking about it, Our two kids were both boys, and John wasn't used to being around young women. He had no immunity to it. Despite his initial confusion, John gradually warmed up to Ali's teasing and affection. It was a complicated feeling. Ken, watching the scene with a smile, didn't seem to mind, leaving me feeling bewildered. Noticing my reaction, Ken said with a smile, "What's the matter, Mom? See, Ali and Dad got along quickly, right? Open your heart to her too. Even if you say that. Come on, Mom, don't be such a stick in the mud. It's nice, isn't it? She brings so much light. It helps me feel energized too. I don't want to end up lonely and gloomy like my brother." Ken mocked his brother Michael. They had never had a good relationship with him. Scolding the carefree Ken has always been Michael's role. But now, having married before his brother, Ken is quite smug. Seizing the opportunity, I scolded Ken for complaining about his single brother. "What are you saying about Michael?" Yeah, Mom always favored Michael. But the single brother is the loser. I'm the winner for marrying a young and cute wife." I sighed at Ken's cheerful demeanor. Still, I wondered if marrying such a frivolous woman was really okay. However, it's a fact that Ken started working seriously after getting a spouse. I guess I'll have to overlook her lack of manners since it would be problematic if he kept changing jobs. But Ali turned out to be more formidable than I imagined. She began visiting our house frequently, for no apparent reason. Always when John was home. "Hi John, I'm here again today." John seemed quite pleased, not minding Ali's visits at all. And no wonder. Ali would cling to him and be overly affectionate every chance she got. He must be thrilled to have a young girl pay him so much attention. However, being subjected to their unnatural communication, akin to nightclub hostessing, was unbearable for me. When I glared at Ali, she just grinned. "Sorry, I just can't help but dote on John." "Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about you, Hannah." I was dumbfounded by Ali's off-base remarks. But then again, I couldn't help but notice Ali's possessions. Upon closer inspection, all of Ali's belongings were brand name, and she often brought expensive-looking sweets as gifts, saying they were just a little something. She seems to be doing quite well for herself. Can a caregiving job really be that lucrative? As if reading my mind, Ali responded with a laugh. "Oh, this bag and these clothes? I bought them recently. I got a promotion. My boss always says I'm really good at winning over the elderly. I get liked too easily, it's almost troublesome." Ali laughed, and John nodded in agreement. "That's right. Ali is always so cheerful, talking to her makes you feel good." I was shocked to John that the old-fashioned and stubborn John had opened up to her this much. As Ali and John's relationship deepened, mine with John grew more strained. John, now constantly talking about Ali, praising how cute she is and how lucky Ken is, would invariably end with, "If I were 40 years younger." It's truly distasteful to see a man his age acting so smitten with a younger woman. I realized I needed to have a serious talk with John. We had previously discussed buying a new house. Since our current home was getting old, and we wanted to leave something nice for our children. However, John has recently become so infatuated, only muttering Ali, making any serious conversation impossible. The plan has come to a complete halt. How long will this situation continue? I warned Ken to make her stop, but it had no effect. "You're misunderstanding. Ali's just sociable. Besides, Dad's retired and has too much free time, so it's perfect. Don't be jealous of Ali, it's unbecoming," he said. After enduring many days filled with such gloom, something happened that finally made my anger explode. That day, from the morning, John was all fidgety. "I'm heading out for a bit," he said, and dashed out in no time. He didn't mention where he was going, and I didn't ask. By this point, the relationship between John and me had deteriorated further, and we rarely spoke. When evening came, John suddenly returned home. "I'm home. I'm home." For some reason, Ali and Ken were with him, carrying lots of bags, which gave me a bad feeling. "We had such a fun time. I love how generous Dad is, Allie said, clinging to John's arm. Watching Allie, John smirked in a way that nearly made me sick. It seemed from their conversation that they had gone to a department store and John had bought loads of clothes and bags for Allie and Ken. All on John's dime. I was trembling with anger but tried to calm myself down. After they left, I confronted John. What's this all about? Buying so much stuff. Did they just ask and you bought everything? What's wrong with opening my wallet for my children? John retorted, defiantly. I looked at him with disdain. They're both grown adults, aren't they? They work, so they should be able to buy their own things. And where do you even get that kind of money? John was momentarily speechless, having hit the nail on the head. John tends to spend freely when he gets carried away, so our savings are limited. The source of the money was a mystery, but when pressed, he grudgingly admitted, I took it out of my pension. From your pension? You don't get that much. If you keep spending like this, it'll be gone in no time. Really, it's bad enough to buy, but to ask for it is something else. To be so easily swayed by a woman's flippant words. Enough! John shouted over my unending words. His face turned beet red, perfectly fitting the phrase instant boil. Are you defying me? He then produced a divorce paper from somewhere. Already signed, and thrust it in front of me. I was dumbfounded, and John yelled. Allie is a kind-hearted good girl. What do you know? If you insult Allie anymore, I'll divorce you. What an absurd argument. Overwhelmed by John's intensity, I tried to reason with him to calm down. Still, the situation worsened, leaving us more estranged than before. How serious is John, really? To waive a divorce paper like that, is it worth getting so angry? Feeling the dispute escalating, I decided to consult with my eldest son, Michael. Waiting for a moment when John was out to grab my smartphone. And call. Hello? Michael? Hey, Mom? What's up? It had been a while since I heard Michael's voice. Busy with his job, he seldom visits home, but he was as kind as ever. Actually, I'm in a bit of trouble. I began, summarizing the recent events. Allie's clingy behavior towards John. John, smitten and buying her anything, and Ken, looking on unfazed. It had even escalated to a divorce scare. After finishing my tale, I sighed. So that's what's been happening. That sounds tough, Mom. That's right. I'm at my wit's end with those two. Lately, I've seriously considered divorcing and moving out of this house. Yeah, I think divorce might be the best option. But you shouldn't be the one to leave. It should be them. Michael said firmly, which made me tilt my head in confusion. What do you mean? I have a plan. I can't talk about it yet due to work, but when the time comes, I'll let you know. For now, let's proceed with the new house preparations. You haven't moved forward with the house talk with Dad, right? Then, Michael explained his plan. I've reached my limit with this lifestyle. It seems following Michael's plan is the only way forward. After hanging up, I finally made up my mind. Time passed. And I purchased a new house that was for sale in the neighborhood. John was surprised by my sudden action and started complaining. Doing things on your own. Where did you get that kind of money from that money? It's none of your business. I replied curtly, and John was silent for a while. However, he soon started moving sneakily with Allie and Ken. I had a pretty good idea of what they were thinking. Following Michael's instructions, I let them think they were getting away with it for a while. The contract went smoothly, and finally, the day of handover arrived. John and I stepped into our new home. For some reason, Allie and Ken were also there. This is the new place. It's lovely. The kitchen is spacious, and you can see the living room from it. It'll make cooking much easier. New constructions are really something, huh? My study will be the room on the second floor that gets the most sunlight. Watching Allie and Ken frolicking around like children, I decided to set things straight. Oh, you two aren't going to live here, you know? Upon hearing my words, Allie and Ken smirked devilishly. John cleared his throat with a cough. I'm going to be living with Ken and Allie from today, John declared loudly, to which I feigned confusion. Huh? Of course. Having Allie around will brighten up the place. Talking to you just leads to endless complaints. We three decided this after a discussion. Just as I thought. Their recent secretive talks were about forcing their way into living here. Allie cheerfully answered that they were planning to move out of their apartment and have their belongings shipped here. If you oppose, forget about being taken care of, Allie said with a grin. Don't let me hear any complaints. A wife should listen to her husband. John was as forceful as ever. I sighed. They knew nothing about what Michael and I had been planning secretly. Excuse me? I'm already single, you know? My words left John and Allie dumbfounded. Huh? Huh? The divorce papers have already been filed. You handed them to me during our last fight, remember? I quickly filled in my part. Speaking with a smile, I left the three of them looking bewildered. Why would you do something like that on your own? That wasn't serious. But that's what you said. If I defy you, we divorce. Well, I have no intention of listening to you, so let's divorce. What are you talking about? I've always thought you were stubborn and selfish, but I tried my best to manage. However, I've reached my limit. My patience has run out. I spoke with a big smile on my face. Speaking with a broad smile felt incredibly liberating. It seems I had been too patient for too long. John, panicking, tried to say something in response, but Allie cut in. It's fine. Let Hannah move out. We're going to live here anyway, right? But, well... The reason John hesitated was because of money. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. This house is in my name, I bought it. So, it's you guys who need to leave. Huh? Allie seemed to think the house was purchased with John's money. However, the house was bought in cash, not with John's money, but mine. Unaware of this, Allie must have felt secure following John, believing everything would be fine as long as she sided with him. But, you always said you had plenty of assets and could buy us a house or two, right? What's the deal? Well, that is... It's simple. About 10 years ago, I inherited a fortune from my late parents. That inheritance was solely mine, not shared property with my spouse. Likely, John pretended to have assets just to impress Allie. In other words, he was just putting on airs of being wealthy. Contributions to Allie were actually coming from his scant pension, unbeknownst to them. And the fact that I had assets was something Ken, my younger son, also didn't know. Given Ken's irresponsible nature, there was a risk he would rely on the inheritance. That's why I never told Ken about the inheritance. Therefore, Allie and Ken would never imagine that I, a mere housewife, had more money. They were completely fooled by John's pretense of wealth. John had pleased them with promises of buying a house. Those words tricked them thoroughly. However, John hardly had any savings. The actual funds for the purchase came from me. Now, with me filing for divorce, John and Allie, being outsiders, can't live in this house, which is mine. That's why John, realizing the divorce papers had indeed been filed, started complaining. He likely never intended to divorce seriously, it was just a threat during arguments. As soon as I reported that the paperwork was completed, John's panic was a clear sign of his cowardice. When I carefully explained the situation, Allie and Ken were shocked. Allie's clinginess to John was obviously motivated by money. Given all the brand name items she had him buy, that was easy to guess. Her plans thwarted, Allie's face soured. What? He's a broke old man? That's the worst. Then he's useless to me. I actually lost out by being nice to him. But that's... John was shocked, sitting down weakly. To see my always arrogant and stubborn husband reduced to this by a young girl's words was, frankly, pitiable. Then, the front door slowly opened. Ken was the first to react upon seeing who entered. Why are you here? It was Michael. Beside him stood a graceful woman. his fiancée, Mia. Michael had been single for a long time but was in a serious relationship. Mia is the same age as Michael. She was a decent woman, utterly incomparable to Ali. It would be rude even to compare them. I had been introduced to Mia recently by Michael, who had already informed me they were getting married soon. It was around the time I was having issues with John and the others, so the news was to be shared with the rest of the family once things had settled down. This house was bought for Michael and Mia. While John, Ali, and Ken were scheming, we were making our plans with Michael and Mia, deciding firmly on what to do next. This house is for me, Michael, and his fiancée, Mia. Outsiders like you two have no right to live here. Ken was outraged. What? That's crazy. Giving the house to my brother who showed up later is just wrong. Yeah, we've already given up our apartment. We have nowhere to live. What are you going to do about it? The two of them ranted hysterically. Ignoring their unseemly behavior, Michael simply said, "A place to live? Don't worry, there's no need to be concerned about that." Huh? Your new residence is going to be behind bars, Michael declared calmly, without batting an eye. At that moment, the color drained from Ali and Ken's faces. What are you talking about? That makes no sense. Ken raised his voice in panic. Their gazes drifted uncertainty through the air, cold sweat beginning to form on their faces. Amid this, Michael began to calmly detail the crimes Ali and Ken had committed. Ali had been embezzling money from the residents of the facility where she worked. She sweet-talked the elderly residents into entrusting her with their bank cards and then withdrew money to keep for herself. Ken was aware of this. He was shocked when his wife first confessed to the crime. But since it seemed like an easy way to make money, he had assisted her. Their method was simple. First, they selected their target. Preferably an elderly person with no close relatives or whose family rarely visited. Essentially, those abandoned by their families. Seniors showing signs of dementia were also ideal since they were less likely to notice if their money was missing. Once a target was chosen, Ali used her brazen communication skills and excessive physical affection to lower their guard. Then, when they had fully trusted her, she sweet-talked them into handing over their bank cards. She also managed to get their PINs and withdraw money. The money obtained was spent on leisure, splurging on brand-name clothes and bags, and enjoying trips and gambling. Ali's lavish lifestyle made sense upon hearing this story. All her talk of promotions and such was all funded by money swindled from kind-hearted seniors. Now that her true colors were revealed, she seemed not just a bright woman but a terrifying one. A normal person would reprimand their partner upon discovering their involvement in such crimes. Yet, Ken participated instead, which was outrageous. The reason his jobs seemed to last unusually long was due to this scheme. A workplace where Ken, being irresponsible, could easily obtain a large sum of money with little effort. There was no way he could quit it. There's no way they could quit now. You both already have an arrest warrant out. Be prepared, Michael said with clear words, causing Ali and Ken to turn pale. In fact, Michael's job is as a police officer. And his fiancée, Mia, is also in law enforcement. The way their criminal activities were uncovered by the police was simple. Ali and Ken's crimes had become sloppy over time, eventually catching the attention of a resident's family member. Suspicious of unauthorized withdrawals, the family consulted with the facility's staff, leading the facility director to reach out to the police, the department that handles fraud and embezzlement. Coincidentally, Michael had been transferred to that department this year and was assigned to the case. As they investigated, it became clear that a staff member was behind it. But they acted discreetly to avoid tipping off the criminals. And eventually, they traced it back to Ali and Ken. Michael sighed and continued. I never thought I'd arrest a family member. I'm disappointed in you, Ken. Your attitude of running away from hardships and seeking the easy way out hasn't changed at all. In fact, it's gotten worse than before. Shouldn't you have stopped your wife the moment she committed a crime? Instead, you joined her in squeezing money out of them, the height of folly. Ken flinched at Michael's sharp words. In contrast, Ali shouted defiantly. Hold on! Arresting us is too much! All those lonely old people never had anyone visit them. I diligently listened to their ramblings, and they were so happy. It's only natural for me to take their money for doing something good. Such absurd reasoning. Riding on Ali's fallacious argument, Ken quickly made excuses. That's right. Ali, who always smiles and listens, was liked by the old men in the facility. I don't think they'd feel bad. It's like giving pocket money to their grandchildren. What are they even saying at this point? Justifying their crimes is utterly reprehensible. I never thought they could be so rotten. I glared at Ali and Ken with contempt. What kind of nonsense are you spouting? Withdrawing someone else's money without permission is theft. It's astonishing how you can be so brazen after committing such crimes. Both of you are the worst. I never want to see your faces again. As I yelled, Ali and Ken still mumbled complaints under their breath. Michael, disgusted by their behavior, said, Let's save the chatter for the police station. On his cue, police officers who had been waiting outside entered the house and surrounded Ali and Ken. The two were visibly startled by the sudden turn of events, looking pitifully flustered. Amidst this, John, who had been silent, stood up and, grabbing a police officer's arm, shouted, Wait, please! Could there be some mistake? I can't believe Ali would do such a thing. Still blindly believing in Ali. His delusion was almost laughable. Michael, looking at his father, spoke in a stern tone. Dad, you need to face reality. Ali and Ken are criminals. There are many victims. They need to be punished now. If you interfere, I'll have no choice but to arrest you for obstructing police work. Michael's words seemed to shock John even further. He released the officer's arm and stood frozen, looking like a shell of his former self. Ali and Ken, without even glancing at John, were quickly taken away in a car. They are likely facing a grim future. As for Ken, I've always scolded him for his misdeeds since he was young. Despite all the scolding over the years, Ken ended up carrying out such crimes. It seems none of it ever truly sank in. At this point, there's nothing more I can do. Even without Ali, the wicked woman, he would have likely ended up on a similar path sooner or later. As a parent, all I can hope for now is that his rotten heart becomes somewhat decent in the future. After some time, the two were arrested for embezzlement. Ali, the main culprit, received a sentence, while Ken, who joined in later to assist in her crimes, was sentenced as well. Though they had nearly spent all the stolen money on entertainment, the remaining amount was returned to the victims. During their explanation at the police station, it seemed they finally felt some guilt and cried out words of repentance. But it's too late once the crime has been committed. I hope they properly serve their time and reflect on their actions. As for John, who blindly trusted Ali and Ken without committing any crimes himself, he was disheartened afterward. He was particularly shocked by the revelation of Ali and Ken's misdeeds, regretting that he had opened his heart so easily to Ali's cheap flattery. I thought I had a good judgment of character. I couldn't help but snort at John, who was hanging his head low. What are you even saying? Fooled by such trivial seduction. Now that you're going to live alone, make sure to keep a tight hold on your wallet and avoid any foolish displays of wealth. Ugh. John groaned, holding his head. He then moved to a rundown apartment complex, 60 years old, known for housing destitute elderly people. Traumatized by being deceived by Ali, he has become suspicious and decided not to open his heart to anyone. Even when a few relatives and acquaintances reached out, they were put off by John's curt manner and drifted away. However, he does respond, albeit sparingly, whenever Michael, his eldest son, contacts him. And, inevitably, he always ends up apologizing in the end. My bad. This phrase likely encompasses his obstruction of the police and how harsh he had been towards Michael all this time. After all, he used to complain about Michael being pathetic just because he was single. Ultimately, it's clear who ended up happier between Ken, who married a criminal, and Michael, who, although he married later, found a solid and respectable woman. As for me, I now live in this new house with Michael, Mia, and one more person. This year, they had a baby, making us 4 in total. It is a girl, incredibly adorable and takes after both of them. After taking a year's maternity leave, Mia returned to her job. Eager to work hard, I take care of the household chores and their child for her. Thank you always. I feel relieved leaving them in your care, Hannah. Mia says to me with a smile, indicating our relationship is in good standing. I'm genuinely relieved Michael found such a wonderful person. Reflecting on it, the latter part of my life has been full of various events. But the stormy days have finally passed. Now, I wish for a peaceful retirement. With that thought, I squinted into the gentle spring sunlight. Well, this makes it clear, doesn't it? The entire inheritance goes to your brother. The will is genuine, so stop your doubting. What? Is it really okay for us to take all this money? My husband, looking down on me, and the elated sister-in-law. The $100 million inheritance from father will be inherited entirely by my brother. I stare at the will stating this with a sense of utter despair. Have I lost everything and am stuck with this despicable man for the rest of my life? But with one sentence from my brother, everything turns upside down. My name is Catherine. I'm a 55-year-old housewife. I have no children with my husband, Robert, and we live as a couple. Robert is, in a word, a typical chauvinist. Since the beginning of our marriage, Robert's commands were absolute, and I could neither defy him nor express my opinion. My husband, 10 years older than me, has no consideration for me at all. I serve Robert like a slave, desperately doing household chores, and if there's something he doesn't like, he doesn't hesitate to verbally abuse me. Being unable to have children was also blamed on me, and I cried in secret almost every day. I wanted to divorce, but I didn't want to worry my relatives, and I didn't have the financial strength to become independent. I've been enduring and staying strong under my arrogant husband, who has a knack for psychological abuse. My only emotional support was my father. My father was once a capable businessman. He built a company from scratch and developed it into a major corporation. Although he was a workaholic, he loved my brother and me in his own way. Shortly after I got married, my mother passed away in a car accident, and my father immersed himself more in work as if to distract himself from the loneliness. It seems the overwork took its toll. My father had a stroke and was taken to the hospital. Fortunately, his life was not in danger, but he was left paralyzed on the left side. The price for working so recklessly was a massive inheritance. I persuaded my father to retire. I was worried about my father living alone, so I managed to persuade my husband, and we moved into my father's house. Once a workaholic, my father seemed to age rapidly upon retirement, showing signs of dementia, and in no time, he was bedridden and in need of nursing care. My physical and mental burdens increased dramatically. In addition to everyday housekeeping and taking care of Robert, I now had to take care of my father with dementia. Sometimes my father would lay quietly, but other times he would shout and thrash around in the middle of the night, or he would wander out of the house. I was constantly exhausted due to lack of sleep, stress, and endless hard work. Although my father was often dazed, there were times when he was clear-minded. At such times, we could have a peaceful conversation like the old times. My father often thanked me and smiled sadly, saying, "I want to leave you with as much as I can." My father passed away. This happened 3 years after I started taking care of him. Although I was relieved from the burden of care, the loss of my father, my only emotional support, left me with an enormous sense of loss and loneliness. My only hope was my father's inheritance. An inheritance of $100 million, even if split in half with my brother, would be $50 million. With that amount of money, I could finally break free from my devil-like husband. It was my only remaining hope in life. Then, a few days later, I was called by Robert and our eldest son's wife, Naomi, to discuss the inheritance. Naomi's husband, that is, my brother, has been working overseas for several years. He had returned home for the funeral but had just returned to his assignment yesterday. In place of my brother, his wife Naomi would also be present. Your dad's will was found in the back of the drawer. It's good that it was ready for us and it wasn't sealed, so let's take a look right away. A will? I didn't know there was such a thing. I was providing care every day, but I never saw him writing a will. I wondered why my husband, who hardly cared for my father, knew about it. I had an uneasy feeling and a bad premonition. Let's read it. All of my assets will be inherited by my eldest son, Ken. Dated April 1st, John Smith. That's it. I couldn't believe my ears. I had always thought that my father's estate would be equally divided between my brother and me. I couldn't believe that all of my father's $100 million estate would be inherited only by my brother. Whoa, wait a minute. That's strange. Why would that be? My husband handed me the will and told me to see for myself as I panicked. Indeed, it was written on the will, along with my father's signature. I immediately suspected that the will was forged. My father had a good relationship with both my brother and me, and he wasn't the type to favor only one of us. But would my kind and straightforward brother really hoard the inheritance all to himself? As I was deep in thought, my brother's wife burst into laughter. Wow! We get to keep all of his money? That feels kind of wrong. But if that's his wish, we have to respect it, right? I absolutely couldn't accept this. As I silently held the will, both my husband and my brother's wife glared at me. Hey, are you doubting this? If so, you can bring in a handwriting expert or something. Just because it's inconvenient for you doesn't mean you can go doubting it. You really have a bad attitude. I'll do that. I murmured, deciding to get the will appraised. However, contrary to my expectations, the results were that it was unquestionably written by the testator himself. I was disappointed at the shocking results and fell into despair, thinking about the past. I had devoted my life to taking care of my husband and my father. Living in fear of my husband's anger, being hurt by his verbal abuse, and being called a worthless woman was painful, but my last days with my father were happy. Even though I believed that my father cared for me too. It was more shocking and unbearable for me to think that my beloved father didn't care about me than not receiving the inheritance. I probably have to leave this familiar house and land, because they are part of my father's real estate inheritance. My dream of divorcing my husband is also now back to square one. When I told my husband about the appraisal result of the will at home over the weekend, he sneered at me with a self-righteous face. That settles it, all the inheritance goes to your brother. Don't go meddling in things anymore. The will was real. Always doubting, you worthless wife. He left the house after throwing those words. Speaking of which, my husband has been away from home a lot lately. He's been coming home from work very late, and he's often not home on weekends like this. I found it suspicious, but I didn't want to see my husband as much as possible, so I was actually relieved. Despite my husband's objections, I wanted to talk to my brother directly about the inheritance. My brother, who worked overseas, was always busy, but he was a kind and reliable person. I made sure in advance that my brother wasn't too busy, and then I gave him a call. After some brief greetings, my brother again apologized for leaving the care of our father entirely to me and thanked me for handling the funeral and various procedures. Don't worry about it. By the way, Robert, about Dad's inheritance. Was it always decided that you would be the sole heir? I tried to ask casually. It was unbearable to think that maybe I wasn't loved by my father, but I wanted to talk about it properly. Huh? What do you mean? All of the inheritance goes to me? My brother sounded surprised. I thought Naomi had told him, but it seems he was hearing about it for the first time. But the will was genuine, so the result wouldn't change. I told my brother about what happened. I see. The handwriting on the will is Dad's and that was all it said, huh? Understood, I'll need some time to think. I'll get back to you. I'll tell Naomi not to proceed with anything until she hears from me. My brother said, ending the call. Intrigued yet patient, I waited for my brother's call. Days later, my brother contacted me. My brother had requested that I look into Naomi's suspicious activities by hiring a private investigator. He also advised me to claim my legitimate share from him. The legitimate share refers to the minimum portion of an inheritance that is guaranteed to an inheritor, and the amount varies based on your position in the family. In my case, I can claim dollar from my father's $25 million inheritance. Even with his will stating, all the inheritance should go to my brother, this legal provision would still allow me to inherit the $25 million. However, this did not sit well with my husband and my brother's wife. The decision has already been made. Don't mess it up now, they protested. However, there was more to my brother's advice. I'm not asking for the $25 million. All I want is this house, filled with memories of our father, and the land. The total estate is worth $100 million, but the real estate property is only worth $10 million. I'll cede all the rest of the inheritance to my brother. Still, the two of them continued to argue, so I continued. If this continues to escalate, I have been instructed by my brother to hire a lawyer to join the discussion. If it comes to that, I'm sure I'll inherit $25 million exactly. My husband and Naomi fell silent. Eventually, it seemed the two decided it was more profitable to settle for the $10 million worth of real estate. We finally agreed on the division of the inheritance. A few days later, I received the results of an investigation I had requested from a private investigator about Naomi. I immediately contacted my brother. After many twists and turns, the process of inheriting our father's estate was successfully completed. During the process, my brother Ken, from abroad, rushed to help. I inherited the family home and land, which was worth $10 million. My brother inherited the rest of the estate, which amounted to $90 million. Naomi and my husband were both in a good mood, with things progressing as they had hoped. After completing the inheritance proceedings, the four of us left the law office and returned to our father's house. While having a cup of tea in the living room, my brother began to speak, placing his smartphone on the table. Well done, everyone. Now that we've successfully inherited Dad's estate, there's something I want to talk about, he said with a smile. With that, he pulled a document from his pocket and spread it out on the table. The faces of my husband and Naomi turned pale upon reading the content. "It's a will" was the title written on the document. At the end of it was my father's signature and stamp. The date was about 5 years ago. This is a will that Dad entrusted to me when he was still working. It was created with 2 witnesses at a notary office. It's a legally valid will, my brother informed us. According to him, our father had drafted it before he had a stroke. His wife had already passed away, and in the event that something happened to him, he wanted to ensure his children would be properly provided for. The content of the will indicated that 1/4 of the total estate was to be left to Ken, who already had significant wealth, and 3/4 to Catherine, housewife. My father had made clear his intention not to change this will, and had explicitly stated in the will. If there's any change to this will, the reason for the change must be stated. Any will that does not include a reason for change is considered null and void. My father was really pushing himself at work. I think he was considering all sorts of things, like what would happen if he fell gravely ill or became senile. The estate was enormous, so he prepared early to prevent any conflicts among the remaining family members. My brother said, caressing the will. The will contained an addendum, stating, "I hope that there will be no conflicts over the inheritance and that the family will continue to live happily together." It was a will filled with my father's warm wishes for his family. I was touched to know that I was loved by my father just as much as my brother, and my heart swelled. On the other hand, my husband and Naomi next to me turned pale. "So, if you're going to change this will, the reason has to be stated, or else it's all null and void. Even if it's in my dad's handwriting. Maybe he was forced to write it when he was in a delirious state due to dementia." Suddenly, my husband slammed the table. With a ferocious expression, he glared at my brother and growled. "Hey, Ken, do you have any proof? Calling me a criminal. I never said you forged the will, did I, Robert?" He then looked at his wife, Naomi, sitting next to him. Naomi remained silent. I found it strange. Naomi informed me that my father had passed away and I was in the States for the funeral. After I returned abroad, apparently the topic of inheritance came up. But even though it concerned me, I wasn't informed of anything about it, my brother mentioned. He was looking at his wife, Naomi. Naomi still said nothing. Quit your yapping. The inheritance is all settled, the $90 million is ours. It doesn't matter what you say now. What do you mean by ours? The one who inherited is me, my brother countered calmly. Shut up, my husband shouted back. The conversation was getting nowhere. I'm not sure what you mean, but the $90 million I inherited are just worthless paper, my brother said calmly. What? My husband retorted, surprised. My brother explained patiently. Our father's estate was worth $100 million. All of the assets, apart from real estate, were stocks in our father's own company. Back when my father was running the company, everything was smooth sailing and the stocks were soaring. But after he stepped down, the company continued to run in the red, and it seemed to be on the verge of bankruptcy in the 3 years before he passed away. The stocks that once had a value exceeding $90 million was now virtually worthless pieces of paper. But that can't be possible, can it? It's the truth. I inherited knowing that. I plan on restructuring my father's company, and since it had nothing to do with you, I didn't bother telling you. My husband seems rattled and mumbles to himself. He can't seem to come to terms with reality. It was then that Naomi spoke up for the first time. Hang on, just wait a minute. What do you mean by that? So you're saying I unknowingly inherited trash, while Catherine alone inherited $10 million? That's not fair. That's unfair. Beside the screaming Naomi, my brother sighed. Naomi. I inherited my father's estate. You weren't disadvantaged in any way. Is there any reason for you to be this angry? But, I thought we were going to get all of that $100 million. I planned for so many things. Robert, my husband, glared sharply at the flustered Naomi. So you conspired with Robert, thinking you were going to get all of my father's money. And while you were at it, you were having an affair, weren't you? Naomi and her husband fell silent as if frozen in place. Why? Naomi muttered in a raspy voice. Glancing at her, my brother continued. After our phone call, my brother started to suspect Naomi. Why didn't she talk to me about the inheritance? Why had her interactions with me been so curt lately, and why had she started ignoring my calls? I had my suspicions, and after seeing her post on social media, I was certain she was having an affair. Pretty soon, I'm going to come into a lot of money. I'll be living the life of a celebrity. I've been talking it over with my babe about how to spend it. He told me we're going to have so much fun once the money comes in. I'm so happy. I don't remember having that conversation with you, Naomi. I wonder who this babe of yours might be. No. You've got it all wrong. This isn't. Ignoring his flustered wife, my brother pulled out a large envelope. He took out several photos from the envelope and lined them up next to the will. They were pictures of Naomi and Robert going into a hotel with their arms entwined. The close relationship between the two was clear. I've been abroad, you know. I hired a private detective to investigate because I was curious about your babe. Presented with undeniable evidence, Naomi started to shake. Looking at Naomi's affair partner, my husband, I saw that he was boiling red with anger, a stark contrast to the pale Naomi. Damn you, snooping around like a stalker. What the hell is all this? With your ridiculous will and these photos. What a joke. Stop! Suddenly, Naomi raised her voice. She approached my brother in a seductive voice, like a bad actress. Hey, you're wrong, it's all a misunderstanding. It's all Robert's doing. He convinced me that if I listened to him, I'd get all of your dad's inheritance. Hey, wouldn't you be happy to receive $100 million? I thought it was for your benefit. My husband, who had been easily betrayed, stared at Naomi with his mouth wide open.
This picture, we were just messing around. You were always overseas, and I was lonely. You're also to blame, aren't you? Hey, forgive me. The $90 million is no good anymore, but let's take the $10 million from Catherine's real estate.
Did you forge the will?
Huh? Of course not. Robert did it. He said it was easy and had it written by your father. See, I'm not at fault.
When the matter of the forged will was revealed, my husband flew into a rage and lunged at Naomi, but my brother quickly intervened.
You bastards. You don't have any evidence. You all will regret this in hell.
As he ranted and kicked a chair, my brother coolly watched and slowly took out his phone. Oh, it seems my phone was on record mode. It's been recording everything since we came home. That was a careless mistake. The husband and Naomi turned pale and fell silent. Also, I didn't mention it, but this room has surveillance cameras that record everything. I installed them because of Dad's severe dementia, just in case something happened to him. What a coincidence. In the silent living room, only my brother kept talking. Falsifying a will is a crime. Your earlier outburst at us could be considered a threat, punishable by law. There's a police station nearby, and they would be here quickly if we report it. But then again, since the inheritance issue has been settled and if you swear not to touch Catherine's stuff in the future, maybe there's no need to report. What do you think? As he said this, my brother started operating his phone. I might as well send this voice recording to my computer overseas. Having been silently observing the exchange until now, I pulled out a document from my bag and thrust it at my husband.
Robert, I want a divorce. Whoa, hold on, reconsider this. I'm sorry. We've been together for years, haven't we? Who do you think has been providing for you all this time? I've had enough. Stop with the excuses and just agree to the divorce. If not, I'm calling the police.
I clenched my smartphone with a look of grim determination. Robert drooped his shoulders and nodded.
Naomi, our relationship is over. Once I received the money, you were planning to take it and be with Ken, weren't you? I heard the records of your exchanges with Ken from a private investigator.
Naomi hung her head, covering her face with her hands. Afterwards, both my brother and I got divorced. Following the divorce, Robert left the house. The inheritance that he thought he'd acquired was not only worthless, but Naomi also spilled the beans about the forgery of the will. Everything that happened in the living room was also fully recorded. Robert must have been livid, but there was nothing he could do about it. The surveillance camera in the living room was originally installed for my father's care, but it also served the purpose of collecting evidence of Robert's emotional abuse. Even if I acquired my father's inheritance, I was planning to submit it as evidence in a divorce trial if Robert refused to divorce. When I told my brother about this, he suggested we use that camera as well. After the divorce, Robert lost his job due to rumors of his affair spreading in the workplace. It seems his colleagues had spotted him going in and out of hotels with a woman who was not his wife. Robert's parents had already passed away, and with the loss of his job and home, he disappeared. I had been requesting a share of his assets, but I didn't want to be involved with Robert anymore, especially after having inherited some wealth. Naomi, the woman Robert cheated with, also lost everything just like him. She had been insisting, "I don't want to break up. Don't leave me," during the divorce proceedings with my brother Ken, but the divorce was finalized when solid evidence was presented at the mediation. Naomi had been splurging money while Robert was not around, and she was billed for all of it, leaving her penniless. Since she had not been working from the start, and like Robert, didn't have a home to return to, she's now scraping by in a dilapidated public housing project, living off welfare. My brother Ken is still working overseas, but he has put up the house where he lived with Naomi for sale, and he will be moving in with me in the house that our father left us. I've always lived frugally, but my life has become stable since my brother started contributing to the living expenses. The value of the land my father left me has been increasing year by year, and now it's easily worth over $100 million. I've been freed from caring for my dad and from the emotional abuse from my husband, and now I'm living a relaxed life. With time to myself and now living alone in a large house, I started to think about how I could utilize it. Around that time, I saw a TV program about foreign exchange students doing homestays, and I thought, that's it. I decided to start a room rental service in my spare rooms. I'm offering rooms at a low cost to college students and exchange students, and now I live a lively life with them. We all eat meals together, play games, and help each other with assignments. We live together happily, almost like a family. On other days when I have some free time, I also do activities like reading storybooks at the local public library. I don't have any children of my own, and my husband and I had grown apart. After losing my beloved father, I was always worried about how lonely I would be, but now my days are unbelievably lively and vibrant. Even at my age, it's so rewarding to connect with young people and make even a small contribution to society. There have been many things in my life that were so hard, I wanted to run away. But now, I'm loosely connected with my brother, my roommates, and people in my community, and I'm living fulfilling days. Every day, I savor the modest happiness I've finally achieved. When I heard that my son David abruptly quit his job, I felt a sense of responsibility as a parent. Following my daughter-in-law's instructions, I decided to send them $1,000 every month. For someone living on Social Security, $1,000 a month is a significant amount. But I kept telling myself it's until David finds a job, and I continued to send money while tightening my own belt. However, far from expressing gratitude, my daughter-in-law treated me like a maid. Fed up, I stated clearly in front of David and his wife,
I will no longer help with the cleaning.
This infuriated David and his wife.
How dare a pensioner like you act so high and mighty over a lousy $1,000 a month? It's only natural for a parent to help their child when they're in trouble. That's right. If it were my parents, they would send me money. What makes you think you can tell me to work? I even gave you a grandchild, you should be thanking me.
I couldn't believe my ears at their arrogant remarks. After all, I had been cutting back on my own life, enduring physical and emotional hardship, all for David and his wife's sake. Why do I have to be treated this way? Enough is enough. If they are going to take that attitude, I have my own thoughts too. Don't come crying to me later. I am Alice, a 73-year-old housewife. David, my eldest son, always had a bit of arrogance due to his academic abilities, which worried me. After graduating from college and starting to live on his own, he showed no sign of getting married. But 5 years ago, he brought home his coworker, Hope, announcing that she was his fiancée. Eventually, David and Hope, who got married, started living in a condo about a 30-minute drive away. When their daughter Sarah was born, we had fun times like going out to pick out a baby doll for her, and taking family photos with David's family. But everything changed after my husband passed away 4 years ago. David's decision to quit his job was the trigger. He was ridiculed by his boss in a meeting for a project he worked hard on and couldn't stand it. Shocked by the message from David, I immediately called him.
Have you already found your next job? I'll take it easy for a while and then start looking.
I was taken aback. Wasn't it irresponsible of him, a married man with a young child and a wife?
You haven't started looking yet? Sarah is still only 2 years old. It will be tough for Hope to work full-time. Or are you going to be a house husband? Of course not, housework is a woman's job. Don't worry, I'll work eventually.
His casual tone did nothing to ease my worries. But it felt strange to lecture David, now in his 40s, about his responsibilities as a father. Thinking of Hope's feelings, I was consumed by guilt. It must be a disaster for her that her husband, who worked for one of the leading companies, suddenly quit his job. I contacted Hope and headed for David and Hope's condo.
I'm sorry that my son has caused you trouble.
In response to my deep apology at the front door, Hope vented her intense anger.
What kind of upbringing did you give that man? It's a husband's duty to provide for his family, right? Our life plan is totally ruined now. Please take responsibility as a parent. Oh, I'm sorry. I plan to support him as a mother until he gets a job.
In front of my downcast self, Hope extended her hand smoothly. When I raised my face, Hope was glaring at me with a face full of anger.
Give me $30,000. What? Assuming it takes half a year until he gets a new job, based on his previous salary, that's $21,000. Adding bonuses, $30,000. If you feel guilty, compensate. But that's so sudden. It's your son who suddenly quit his job. It's a problem, you know. Kids cost a lot of money.
I did not expect to be suddenly demanded a large amount of money. I thought she was a lovely daughter-in-law with a nice smile, but this was the real her.
$30,000 is a deal considering what we've put up with. If not, I'll divorce. Then, you won't see your lovely grandchild. Of course, I'll demand property division from David. Is that all right?
Her arrogant words were annoying, but there's no denying my son caused the inconvenience. She must be feeling uneasy.
All right. I'll transfer it as soon as the bank opens tomorrow.
At my response, Hope's anger seemed to have finally subsided. I took the note with Hope's account number, returned home, and as promised, I made the transfer the next morning. As a retiree living off my pension, it was a painful expense, but if this money eases Hope's anxiety and allows David to focus on job hunting, I thought it's unavoidable. But the demands of my eldest son and his wife did not end there. About a month after David quit his job, I received a call from Hope. As soon as I answered the phone, Hope's angry voice echoed.
After all, that meager amount is not enough at all. I'm sorry, but I live on a pension, you know. Although I have some savings and my husband's inheritance, I don't have much leeway. Oh, right, you have your father-in-law's inheritance.
Hope made a muffled laugh.
Times have changed from your era. It costs money to raise kids these days. Sarah's preschool, piano and ballet lessons, tutoring, and even my social life. If I look shabby, Sarah will be embarrassed. Well, I see. Then, what should I do? Just $1,000 a month is fine.
For a moment, my mind went blank. $1,000 a month until David finds a job. That's $12,000 a year. I felt despondent, but I said in a cheerful voice.
All right, $1,000. I'll transfer it tomorrow. Yay, thank you.
Hope said in a chirpy voice and hung up the phone. From then on, I scrimped on everything to come up with the monthly $1,000. Eventually, I plan to leave this house and enter a nursing home, so I need to keep my husband's inheritance untouched. If I allocate my small savings to the remittance, I will have to live on my pension alone, and the utility bills and food expenses will weigh heavily. So first, I gave up my hobbies. I quit crafting and gardening, which cost material fees and ticket charges, and stopped going to theaters. Furthermore, to save on utility bills, I refrained from using air conditioning and oil heaters, and tried to get by with just fans. Even so, life was hard. I had to change from my usual beauty salon to a cheaper one in the neighborhood. I gave up dyeing my gray hair and getting perms, and limited myself to just getting haircuts a few times a year. On a day I was staying home to save money and idly watching TV, I got a call from Hope.
Hello, Hope. What's up? Alice, you're free, right? Come to our house right now.
Feeling puzzled, I went over, only to find a dolled-up Hope and Sarah waiting for me at the door. In a hurry, they strangely led me to their kitchen sink.
Please clean the kitchen. Huh?
As I stood there bewildered, Hope put her hands on her hips and leaned back.
If you can only spare $1,000, then please make up for it with some labor. We're off to a friend's kid's birthday party, so please make sure everything is sparkling clean by the time we get back. Bye, Grandma.
Leaving me stunned, Hope and Sarah left. I was at a loss, but thought, well, maybe I could help out once in a while. I did have spare time. Hope, busy with child rearing, probably couldn't keep up with the cleaning. However, Hope started calling on me frequently afterwards. Make dinner, mop the floor, scrub the mold in the bathroom. There were even requests like pick up Sarah from kindergarten and stay at home until I get back, about once a week. Cleaning and doing household chores at someone else's house took a toll on my nerves and energy. Literally whipping my old body into shape, I gritted my teeth and agreed quietly, thinking, it's an apology for the trouble David has caused. During this time, an old friend from my student days, Emma, invited me to lunch. Seeing me after a long time, Emma seemed taken aback. No wonder, half a year ago when we met, I had a short, chestnut-colored hair, but now I had black hair mixed with gray, tied back, no makeup, and a plain outfit. I looked suddenly old.
What happened, Alice? You were always so stylish.
When I told her the circumstances, Emma frowned.
David is a grown-up, Alice. It's strange that you feel responsible. You should firmly decline requests from your daughter-in-law. Can I refuse? Yes, you can. Your daughter-in-law is being too brazen.
After talking and receiving advice about David and Hope, I parted ways with Emma and headed home feeling brighter than I had in a long time. A few days later, I went to David and Hope's apartment to do the cleaning that Hope had asked for. This is it. I decided I would refuse next time. As I was about to leave after finishing the air conditioner cleaning, I ran into Hope and Sarah in the communal hallway, who had just returned from outside. As usual, both of them were dressed up. The elegant woman who seemed to be a friend of Hope's was also there, along with a girl who looked about the same age as Sarah. On the other hand, I was dressed in a shabby gray sweatsuit, my black hair mixed with white hair tied up messily. Feeling miserable about the stark difference in our appearances, I quickly looked down. I handed the keys to Hope, bowed to her friend, and quickly left. As I was about to turn the corner of the hallway, I heard a snippet of Hope's conversation.
That's your mother-in-law? Yeah, my housekeeper. It's convenient to use her for free. I wish I had one. No, you can't. She's too embarrassing to be seen in public. Indeed, she does look shabby. Right? I wouldn't want to end up like that old hag.
I felt hot all over with embarrassment and anger. Who does she think is forcing me into this frugal life? After I got home, I contacted David saying, I'd like to have a talk with you and Hope. A week later, on a weekday when Sarah was at kindergarten, I proposed a meeting, which David's couple readily accepted. On the day, as I was invited into their lovely living room and took a seat on the sofa, I looked at Hope and confronted her directly.
I won't be coming to help with cleaning anymore.
After a moment of silence, Hope rattled off complaints rapidly.
Why not? You promised to support us until David gets a job. Are you abandoning us? Hope, I'm not a maid. I was going out of my way to help because David was causing trouble, but I'm done.
I stared alternately at the faces of Hope and David, and I spelled it out for them as if they were slow.
Not working is David's problem, not mine. And if you're struggling to get by, you should think about working yourself before asking me for money.
At this, David slammed his hands down on the table. With a loud thud, my heart jumped. Surprised, I looked at David, who was glaring at me with a vein pulsating in his forehead.
How dare a pensioner like you act so high and mighty over a lousy $1,000 a month? As a parent, it's only natural to help out your struggling kids. Just take care of us without complaining. Yeah. My parents would definitely help out in your situation. Telling me to work, who do you think you are? We even gave you a grandchild, you should be thanking us.
I couldn't believe my ears at the arrogance of David and Hope. After a moment of stunned silence, a fierce anger surged up in me. I had been scrimping and saving, enduring both physical and mental hardships to keep sending money for David and Hope. Why should I have to put up with this? Enough is enough. If they're going to act like that, I have my own thoughts on the matter. Don't expect me to feel sorry when you're crying later. After taking a breath, I said in a low voice.
Oh really? If that's how you feel, I want my money back. $60,000. Huh?
My firm rejection left David and Hope flustered.
I never said I didn't need the money. Remember, you're David's mom. You fulfilled your responsibility. I don't know about that. David hasn't fulfilled his duties as a husband or a father either.
Hope snickered and defended David.
This man takes care of Sarah. When he's home, he bathes her, feeds her, even takes her to the park. He's very devoted to childcare since he's not working. Oh, he does work sometimes. Huh? Hope, he hasn't given you any money. That's odd.
With a provocative tone, I called her out, and Hope made a puzzled face. Meanwhile, David began to fidget noticeably. I continued my poor act.
Oh, I see. David's been pouring all the money he earned from his part-time job into the casino. He's too busy visiting the casino and hardly ever goes to the job center. I wonder if he feels guilty and that's why he's taking care of Sarah.
Hope's eyes widened. And I know the real reason why he quit his job. At my smug face, David's cheeks twitched. He told you that he resigned because his project was ridiculed by his boss, but the truth is, he got drunk and hit on the boss's daughter, which enraged him. That's the real reason.
Why do you know that?
I shrugged and explained. I heard it from Emma.
From Emma?
David asked, repeating what I'd just said.
Emma works as a cleaner at the company you used to work at. I didn't know that, he replied. You wouldn't recognize her in her uniform. The news spread through the office right after you quit, and it even reached Emma's ears. David, is what she just said true?
Instead of replying, David fell silent, looking sullen. Then, I tried to recreate the conversation that Emma taught me.
Man, those rumors about you being the company's top beauty are legit. Compared to you, my wife Hope is a piece of junk. Gotta admit, younger women are just better. Hey, why not keep it hush-hush from the boss and we can hang out? I'm destined for success, you know, there's no loss in choosing me.
As I altered my voice and postured, David swiftly paled, stumbling over his excuses.
Did I really say something like that? Can't recall it at all. Guess it was just a slip of the tongue while drunk. Hope, you'll forgive me, right? Oh, you know what they say about alcohol revealing one's true self.
As David tried to feign ignorance, Hope, sitting next to him, was blushing crimson, her fists tightly clenched.
Am I a piece of junk, huh? No, it's not like that. Just a slip of the tongue. You are lying.
Hope grabbed David by the shoulder and began to shake him furiously.
Didn't you tell me that you couldn't find a job, so you had to spend your days at the job center? If you're working, hand over your pay. No way. If I give it to you, it'll just disappear on your bags and Sarah's clothes. Of course, the husband's money belongs to the wife. That's where you're wrong.
David retorted just as furiously. Hope pointed at me with a fierce expression and unleashed a tirade.
This old hag only gives me a measly $1,000. I have to beg my dad for the rest. Aren't you ashamed as a husband? Of course $1,000 isn't enough for you to lavish on your boys. Did you already give away the initial $30,000 I gave you? I'm not supporting them. I'm just helping out Mike with his dreams.
At Hope's words, David tilted his head in confusion.
I've never heard about you getting $30,000 from my mom. Oh, shoot.
Hope hurriedly covered her mouth. Having accidentally revealed her secret in the heat of argument, it seemed Hope decided to just double down. She's got guts.
Who's this Mike guy?
He's just a classmate from college.
Wow, he looks like a pop star. Did you hit it off at a mixer? Does he know you're a married woman with a child?
As I placed the photo taken by the private investigator on the table, Hope snatched it up and shoved it into her pocket. David's face changed.
I thought it was strange that you were dressing up so young when you left Sarah with me. You were making my mom not only do housework, but also look after Sarah? You're abandoning your duties as a mother. You had a PI track me? You really have too much time on your hands.
After swearing at me, Hope turned a forced smile towards David.
David, don't believe what your mom says. He's just a classmate from college. I'm just helping him with his band activities, selling tickets, buying merchandise, and occasionally giving him a bit of cash as a tip. A tip? So, you're essentially showering a young guy with gifts. And you call yourself a mother.
At his final words, Hope exploded.
All you do is nag about motherhood. The fool who tries to seduce his boss's daughter is the one unfit to be a father. I married you because I heard you had a promising future working at a big corporation, but you just up and quit. You're nothing more than trash now that you're unemployed.
David was also incensed by Hope's screaming, spit flying from her mouth, her eyes bloodshot.
What did you say? I tried to extort money from your mother, but your mother is poor. You two are just as useless. What did you say, you jerk? Okay, keep your fighting for after I've left.
Alice stepped in between the arguing couple, who looked ready to start brawling at any moment, waving a piece of paper.
Both of you, read this. No way, it's a hassle.
David clicked his tongue next to Hope, who tilted her head.
This is my dad's handwriting. What?
The couple went pale as they read the paper, their faces on the verge of tears. It's no wonder. The paper was a message from Hope's father. It seems you guys don't want to work, so I'm cutting off financial support to Hope this month. From now on, combine your strengths as a couple and pay back the $66,000 you owe David's mom.
Mom, you went to Hope's parents' house?
Yes, I did. I smiled at David, who asked nervously.
I showed them a photo of Hope giving a wad of cash to a boy in a cafe, and of David gambling. Furthermore, I told them, I'm supporting them with $1,000 a month, yet Hope treats me like a housemaid. They were quite angry. Unable to participate in a discussion due to work, they entrusted this to me. What? It's totally inappropriate to storm into my parents' house. This is our problem. Don't involve my parents. You have the nerve to say that after involving me.
I was dumbfounded by Hope's selfish remarks.
Now, as Hope just said, this is a problem between the two of you. It was wrong to ask me for help. From now on, you should manage on your own without relying on your parents. First, return the $66,000. You owe it.
At my words, Hope, who had been yelling just a moment ago, suddenly changed her attitude. With a pitiful expression on her face, she began to speak in a coaxing tone, dripping with excuses.
It's too late for me to start working now. I decided to become a housewife once I got married. If you insist on me working, I want to start a nail salon. I guess $50,000 would be enough?
Following Hope's lead, who was implicitly begging for money with teary eyes, David also drastically changed his attitude. He knelt before me, adopting a begging pose and pleading in a pitiful voice.
I'm 45, you know? It'll take time to find a job that suits me. So, I'll need to ask you for a little more support. I promise I'll pay you back someday. Please, I'll work. Please give me $50,000 to start my salon. Also, please continue to support us with $1,000 a month. Shut up!
At the sound of my shout echoing in the room, David and Hope looked startled.
Don't keep babbling on and on. Aren't you ashamed as Sarah's parents? Have some parental awareness.
David and Hope, who had been taken aback, sat up straight under my glare.
Yes. You're supposed to earn your own damn keep. You're pathetic. I am sorry. I don't want to waste my energy. Don't you dare make me angry. I'm sorry.
Seeing David and Hope shrink in fear, I felt a jolt of realization. Oh, I'd done it. I had completely sealed away my turbulent past, a result of my parents' divorce when I was young. Emma had warned me when I got married, when you lose your temper, it's like a demon's face. It's not good for children's education. So I always left disciplining David to my husband and played the supportive role. But this time, my anger had long exceeded its limit. I finally lost patience with the pathetic couple.
Hey. It's a complete lie to say she is not scary when she is angry. I had no idea either. It was always Dad's job to get mad at me.
I once again showered my eldest son and daughter-in-law, who were whispering to each other, with shouts of anger.
So, are you returning the $66,000 or not? Which is it? We will return it.
Trembling, my eldest son and his wife shouted in unison. David, getting up off his heavy ass, began looking for a full-time job in earnest. However, it seemed like he kept failing in the interviews, perhaps because his arrogant attitude slipped through. Having no choice, David abandoned his career in office work and took a job at a factory. But with just that, he was barely making ends meet and couldn't put anything towards repaying his debt to me, so he was desperately earning money by also working part-time on his days off. He scoffed at me, saying $1,000 or so, but he must be feeling the difficulty of earning $1,000 down to his bones. As for Hope, she apparently begged her father for the $50,000 she needed to start a nail salon. As expected, she angered her parents and they cut off ties with her. A younger guy from college named Mike dumped her swiftly after she told him that she was married and couldn't provide any financial support. So, Hope began working as well. Just like David, she is juggling several jobs and paying back the debt to me every month. The eldest son and his wife, full of mutual distrust, can't stop fighting and divorce has been discussed, but if they divorced, paying back the debt would become even more difficult, so they reluctantly live together. Unable to bear seeing the constantly squabbling couple, Hope's parents have taken Sarah to their home. I was able to start using the $1,000 per month that I had been giving to the eldest son and his wife for myself, and by securing repayments from the two of them every month, I regained a comfortable lifestyle. I made an appointment at the hair salon I used to frequent for the first time in several years, had them tidy up my hair, and dyed it ash color. I refreshed my mood, bought new makeup and clothes, replaced my old interior goods, and did all the things I had been refraining from doing for the past few years, letting out my pent-up desires. I blocked the contact details of the eldest son and his wife because they were annoying. The phone kept ringing from both of them, I received long messages full of complaints, and they kept begging persistently, saying, "I'm sorry, give me money." The eldest son and his wife are hopeless, but my granddaughter Sarah is cute, so I keep in touch with Hope's parents and let me see her occasionally. Both I and her grandparents can't help but smile at Sarah, who is innocently cute, unlike the eldest son and his wife. I no longer have to worry about the lives of the eldest son and his wife, and I feel as though a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. From now on, I plan to live my life as I like, pursuing my hobbies and interacting with my granddaughter.